So we'll be getting cranked up here for utility.
I'd like to call call the meeting to order of the New Ulm Airport Advisory Commission. This is March 13th at 4 o'clock. First thing on our agenda, we have election of officials. And any,
I'd nominate Mr. Berg for chair again for 2018.
Second that.
okay, and vice chair?
Would you be willing for another 9 months, Mr. Fensky?
Sure, I'll take it.
All right, I'd nominate you.
Okay. And the secretary?
I'll nominate George.
I don't know how good I'm gonna be at carrying notes, because all the meetings that I've ever gone to, I always have my secretary with me. She's the one that did the notes, not me.
Second.
Okay. George, will you take it then?
I'd rather go a year without having to do it first to learn a little bit what's going on here than get just thrown in my lap the first night. But, I suppose if you guys help me, I suppose I can do it.
Will help.
Well, Peter can help him.
Yeah.
Okay. So electric, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, the officers for 2018 will be Tom Berg, William Fensky, and George. And I can't remember your last name, George, sorry.
Shimley.
Shimley, George Shimley.
Top of the list on the next page.
Okay,
Mr. Vice Chair, may I interject? We do have the membership roster attached. If you have time at a later date, you could double check your emails and your phone numbers. And if you have need any corrections, we can do
Okay.
that in-house. Thank you.
okay. Okay, number 2 then. Approval of the minutes of September 12th, 2017. You've all got it, I think, or not?
I have a correction. I was not here on September 12th. I was in London at the time, so I could not have seconded the item number 1, old business. So does somebody?
Maybe
So that
I
sh-
did.
That should be.
Maybe I did. I can.
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair, I can look back in files and see if we have a note on that. I appreciate the update.
Right.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean,
That's the only correction I have otherwise.
okay.
I'd make a motion then to accept the minutes as written for September of last year with the correction on the old business second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, approved. Old business. Brian, you want to take over?
Absolutely.
Mr. Vice Chair, maybe for the benefit of our new member, this is Brian Page,
Oh.
our consulting engineer for our airport. They have a contract with the city to do various studies and improvements at the airport. So this is Mr. Page.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, I'm Brian Page, as Steve mentioned, with Mead and Hunt. Just to kind of update everybody, let everybody know, I guess, the status of where things stand on the master plan study. Since we met last fall, we made a lot of progress. We actually have the first 2 chapters of the master plan fairly well drafted and put together. And at this stage of the game, we're kind of at a juncture of what we would need to do next is get together with typically what airports will do or cities will do is form a airport planning committee. And that airport planning committee is generally comprised of some airport users of the airport, the people that are actually going to be impacted most by the planning study going forward. What we'd like to do is talk a little bit about that, about the formulation of that group, the purpose of it, and then also kind of get to the point of setting up that next meeting. What we'd like to do is be able to meet with that committee, kind of establish the ground rules of this meeting going forward, but then also invite all of the airport users to come out to a meeting facilitated by our firm. And what we like to do is talk among ourselves about what's important, to the people using the airport the most going forward. Be able to get their input, to gather ideas and thoughts, to be able to move forward, because this planning study that we're currently engaged in is really going to be a roadmap for the city to be able to use and to be able to solve the problems and the needs of the airport going forward. The last time a master plan was undertaking of this scale and magnitude was back in the 1970s, believe it or not. So it's about high time to actually start looking at it. A lot of things have changed. Some of you I know kind of have a pilot's background. So it's high time to kind of look at it and kind of make the planning study a little bit more current with modern, kind of requirements with the FAA and so forth going forward. So kind of getting back to this committee, as we mentioned, generally speaking, what we like to do, or what we suggest, is to be able to form a committee that is generally a little bit more streamlined to some folks that will be good spokespersons or good advocates of the airport to be able to go forward, and then also use them as kind of a conduit to get the message out to the rest of the public and a lot of the users of the airport as well. So it's generally a little bit more easier to work with if that committee is a little bit smaller in numbers, rather than just kind of inviting the whole mass of all the users. You've got roughly, I think, 33 different based aircraft at the airport. Rather than bringing 33 people together, kind of talk through their various needs and wants and so forth. It'd be best if we could put a committee together comprised maybe of a subset of that group, and then take a look at having them help us facilitate some of those meetings with the aircraft users of the airport to be able to kind of shape and craft the master plan going forward.
How many people would you be looking at having on this?
Generally speaking, there is no set number, but generally speaking, it's somewhere in probably that 3 to 5 range would probably be a good, number for an airport of this size.
Okay.
And generally, it is people that know the airport. They've flown in and out of there, or else have quite a bit of experience with the airport to kind of understand the needs, and what's important to pilots. We can certainly do our part, but it's more based on, we're not hands-on, we don't know, we're not in the community, but what we're looking for is that kind of conduit to the people that are here and what matters most to them. So what we did do is we were able to talk to the FBO, talk to Dan and Robin out at the airport, and we did get an updated user list of the folks that are actually based here in New Ulm. We do have a copy of that, and which would probably be a good starting point to be able to kind of sift through some of those names and kind of talk among ourselves to kind of decide, I guess, who best it would be to reach out to and see if they have any interest in joining this committee. But there's quite a host of a number of different entities there. Generally speaking, what we like to do is kind of pick different businesses. You have some fairly good-sized business representation out at the airport, but then you've got it all the way down to the recreational flyers as well. So it kind of runs the gamut out there, and what we should think about is maybe choosing a representative from each one of those areas, if you would, to be represented on that committee.
Are we supposed to come up with names, or
I think probably, Mr. Chair, the thing to do tonight would be is to take this into consideration, and obviously these folks would have to be contacted to be able to go down the list, and maybe there would be some suggestions. The purpose of tonight's discussion was really to kind of talk about it, open up that dialogue, answer any questions that you may have. And of course, if you would like us to be involved in that reaching out, we'd be happy to do that. But it might be best handled, talking among yourselves and deciding who best it should be that would be on this committee. And then what we'll do, once we establish that committee, what we'd like to do is we'd like to meet with them. We'd like to share some of the chapters, as I mentioned, some of the information from those chapters, which is going to include the inventory. Out front is a typical master plan is, what do you have at the airport? Kind of go over everything and talk about that. The next chapter of it is called forecasting, And the forecasting takes a look at, okay, what kind of aircraft do you have at the airport and what's flying in and out of there today and what's going to be flying in and out of there in the planning horizon going forward. And then take that into consideration, which you'll move forward into the subsequent chapters after that will start to craft this master plan around being able to identify and meet those additional needs.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that this list is not inclusive. You may have, as commission members, other names in mind. You may also want to have one of the commission members be in the user group. You know, it's entirely up to you, but I guess we would be looking for your input on who you thought would be important or could contribute to this group. It really comes from the federal grant process, and in that they wanted to see local users give input on this master plan update, as well as the airport commission. Whatever the user group recommends or discusses will come back to this group as well.
Okay.
I think Mr. Berg should be on it
Yeah,
because
I was gonna say
he has the crossover.
And I don't know, what about Christensen Farms? They use it quite a bit, I think.
I would recommend that too as well. And then somebody who has a private aircraft, perhaps, rather than a company aircraft, just to give their side.
And again, there is no magic number when it comes to this group, so if you feel that, you know, representation from those three groups would be good enough, perhaps that could be fine, but as Steve mentioned, this list is just only meant to kind of be as a guide. There may be other members of the community that might have some strong input one way or the other on the airport and might have some ideas and thoughts about growing as a community. The purpose of the putting together this group was really something that, when we met last year or last fall, we kind of talked about this when we were scoping the project with the Federal Aviation Administration and also the Minnesota Department of Transportation Office of Aeronautics. And this group, if you would, was really kind of something that was discussed at that scoping meeting to discuss, which makes sense. That when we're kind of going through a master planning study, our firm is very well-trained and very versed in going through the classic parts of a master plan, identifying where the needs are based on, you know, the input that we hear. But what we're really trying to focus on is the quality of that input that we're hearing and make sure that it is really catered and really tailored to the community and what's important to the local pilots flying in and out of here. We've gotten some information. The airport, Dan, and some of the folks out at the airport have been great resources. But we're looking at taking it that one step further, inviting anybody that is a user of the airport to come out and talk to us. But what we want to do is make sure that we kind of organize the chaos, you know, in one of those meetings, so to speak, and have a group or a central group that we hear the input from folks, and we take that input into consideration, and when we meet, we can have some real meaty discussions.
Mm-hmm. Well, fine. Don't we have two people so far? Or did we get a third? Or,
I think also we should add somebody from the flight service possibly. They're the ones that are dealing with
yeah.
new pilots and those kind of things.
Mr. Chair, is anybody aware who the pilot is for Christensen Farms? I guess I'm not even sure.
Well, I really don't
We'd
know
have to-
either.
we'd have to
But
check
I know
into
I
that.
hear them every morning usually.
I know one of them, but I'm not sure if he would be the appropriate individual, but Brian is the gentleman's name. I know that he does do quite a bit of flying for Christensen, and I know him from some other circles, but he may be a good choice.
Yeah, let's see, I really don't know. And if Tom maybe would know a little more who's using it.
We can find out, yeah.
Yeah. So you want to stay with 3 or you want 4 or 5, or you going to just,
I think the range from 3 to 5 is appropriate, so if you want to go 4 or 5,
well, it's up to the
Certainly.
committee.
we'll be looking for input from whoever would be interested, so.
It's up to the committee. How many do you think we should have on that?
4, I think, and have somebody that is a private pilot that
I know
uses the
Dan
airport.
Magus uses the airport a fair amount too.
Who does?
Dan Magus?
Oh, I was gonna say, I saw, I don't know him, but I'm sure they do a lot of, maybe somebody. So why don't we, you want to have 4 of them then?
I think 4 would be appropriate, the
Okay.
maximum.
Okay.
Otherwise it gets too unwieldy.
So Steve, have you got those names down?
You wanted Mr. Berg, the Christensen Farms primary pilot, New
Right.
Ulm Flight Service, and Dan Magus.
Right. How's that sound, Brian?
That sounds great, Mr. Chair. I think one of the things that's in our scope right now is we will get together with this group and at least have 2 meetings, possibly more, depending on if the group would like to facilitate more meetings. But then what we also have in the scope right now is to also meet with the airport users at least twice during the course of this master plan. And generally speaking, when you would do that is out front of everything to kind of gather their input and open up that dialogue and open up the communication channels. And then somewhere toward the end, if you would, there's no real set time to do it, but somewhere toward the end, just as kind of a reality check. Okay, this is what we heard. These are the problems that we've solved in the master plan. Are we on target or is there something else? And kind of go from there. Now, the Federal Aviation Administration has shown some interest in possibly attending some of these meetings, and we will certainly coordinate that and set that up with Steve and Joe as time goes forward to see if they want to come or can come out and participate in those meetings. They probably won't facilitate, but they'll be here as another resource for anybody that has any questions. So it's an exciting time. It really is, because this is the first time that the airport has gone through this in a long, long time. And it kind of sets the stage, if you would, for what's important, to the airport as a community. We've talked among us several times, about the notion of the crosswind runway and about the importance of that being able to move forward. That's one very important thing that we're hearing and going to address, but it's not all of it. There are some other things to talk about going forward, the fuel system, how the arrival departure building works, hangar space, everything is pretty much on the table.
Is the fence on the table too?
The fence?
That will be required to put up?
The fence is something that we can discuss. There's a lot of different reasons that you would put a fence up. A couple of them that are primary for airports is one, to control wildlife. In some cases, which is a whole different kind of fence, or another one is security. If security becomes an issue or is an issue, that does need to be addressed. In order to be able to move forward with a wildlife type fence, something that would have to be done right out of the chutes would be what's called a wildlife hazard assessment, or a WHA. That study would have to be implemented to be able to justify and to be able to make any of the fencing improvements eligible under the federal AIP program, or Airport Improvement Program. So, forgive me if I talk a little bit in acronyms sometimes, because
No,
I'm
that's
just so
fine.
used to it. But that would be basically the deal with the fence. But there's a lot of reasons that you would look at different parts of the master plan. One of those would be the approaches. Are the approaches working? You have the GPS approaches out there now. Are they good? Are they providing the minimums that pilots are needing? Or are they missing some flights or not able to fly because of the minimums are too low? Whatever the case may be. Are there obstructions out there? I mean, there's a whole variety, of things that are generally addressed in this planning effort. And then in the end, what will happen is once the alternatives are pretty much gelled or solidified, then the next step will be to update what's called the Airport Master Plan. And that Airport Master Plan will take all of this information and put a document together, a set of drawings together that meet the federal guidelines. And that, again, would be a tool that you can use going forward in order to be able to be that first step in getting off the ground with these future improvement projects.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Steve, is there anything else
Mr. Chair, I don't believe so unless you guys have any questions about anything, but we'll go to work and invite these individuals to be in this user group, and if they accept, we'll set up a meeting and keep you guys posted as when and where the meeting would be.
Okay.
Does that sound reasonable?
That sounds great.
Right.
That sounds great. Like I said, we're going to keep charging forward, working on the other parts of the master plan, the other chapters as we can, just to kind of keep the process moving forward. But we are kind of at a critical juncture now that we really would like to sit down with this group and just make sure we're on the same page, and then have that group lead into meeting with all of the users and just make sure we're all on the same page.
Okay. Any other questions for him?
Out of curiosity, Mr. Chairman, is the military ever going to use this airport when they build their new facility?
I couldn't tell you that.
Mr. Chair, the indications that we have had from the National Guard is that they will not be bringing in military aircraft, maybe a small plane now and then,
Yeah.
is my understanding. When the general wants to visit, or whoever.
Yeah.
But that helicopter unit is not moving, is not relocating, that I heard at one stage?
That's my understanding, that they're not gonna have a heliport or whatever. That brings a whole set of new complications
Yes.
to our airport, so we're hoping that doesn't happen, but I guess we haven't seen the plans yet either. That's scheduled for the field maintenance operation facility is scheduled for 2019, so we've got a little bit to go yet.
When is it supposed to be completed, Steve?
I don't know. It's, probably a 2-year project.
Generally speaking, it's our experience, we have seen a little bit of traffic that has come in and used the airport. As time goes on, as I understand, the facility here will also have a new armory or ready center. When that happens, generally speaking, you see a little bit of an uptick, but anything on a scheduled service, probably not. But every so often, you will see some rotor-type aircraft coming in, and possibly even some smaller aircraft from time to time, just to be able to bring, different individuals to and from. But definitely a good thing, because the airport will definitely benefit from that, and fuel sales, and quite possibly even hangar.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have anything for us tonight? Anyone bring up anything? I think that was it, wasn't it, Steve?
Yes, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Thank you.
So we'll set the next meeting on Tuesday, April 10th, 2013, 4 o'clock, or as the call happens.
Sure.
I will not be here, I will be overseas.
I don't think I'll be here either on the 10th, I know that.
Okay, we will, as usual, check with the chair and see if we have any agenda items. If we do, we'll send an agenda out and ask for feedback. If we can't get a quorum, we'll just
Yeah.
have to cancel the meeting.
I think I'm going away that day. I think I leave that day. Okay, motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second?
Okay, we're adjourned.